Cost-reflective tariffs are in the news again. This time, it's not gas, it's not electricity, it's telco. The Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria are calling for market-reflective tariffs, long overdue or poorly timed. Good morning. It's another power-packed episode of Business Week. Today, renowned economist Bismarck Rewane helps us dissect the impetus behind the telecoms industry's drive for market-reflective tariffs. If your mobile bills are going up, you probably want to know why. We also review some big business stories of the past week by the MD of Zrosk Investment Management, including the latest slump in Nigeria's oil production. If you couldn't keep up with the news during the week, as always, we're here to help you catch up. I'm Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani. As always, let's take a look at global energy commodities. Brent is down. Well, Middle East tensions are moderating a bit and oil inventories are up, so it's having an impact, a downward impact, actually, on global oil prices and gas prices, as you'll see. Let's take a look at global equity markets, of course, starting with Nigeria. Here, how did the All Share Index close at the end of the week of trading on Friday evening? I think the All Share Index was actually up, if I can get that on screen. There we go. The market ended at 56.32 trillion naira. All Share Index was up by 0.83%. But it's not only Nigeria we're also looking at the African continent, starting in Ghana, in Kenya, in Egypt, and Morocco, I believe. Ghana and Kenya were actually down at the end of the week. You can see that at 1.13%. The Accra Stock Exchange in Ghana down by 1.13. Nairobi Stock Exchange was also down by 0.25, primarily led there by fast-moving consumer goods. But Morocco and Johannesburg looking bright. What else is happening around the world in global equity markets? Well, US markets feeling very bullish this season. Jobs data came in. While jobs data payrolls did fall, it's still quite strong, raising hopes that the Fed may cut rates later this year. You can see Dow Jones was up by 1.15%. NASDAQ also, composite index, up by 1.94%. Not too bad a picture as well across European stock markets. But let's take a look at my top business picks for the week, starting with the G7 countries who have reached an agreement to phase out coal by the mid-2030s. So from 2035, this is on the back of COP28 in Dubai last year. Of course, the decision was taken, but with no real concrete details. Now, one key player in the G7, Japan, is not all too happy because a lot of its energy does depend on coal-fired production. So we'll see how that evolves. And the G7 leaders are essentially saying, you either capture the carbon from your coal operations or you reduce emissions from your from your coal operations to around 2% by 2035. Football is in the news, not because Arsenal is top of the league tables, but because Premier League clubs have agreed to cap spending or are moving closer to an agreement to cap spending by the 2025-26 season. What this essentially means, it's an anchoring system that the football clubs have. And they are saying if you take the bottom of the Premier League table, in this case, Sheffield United, take their revenues for that season, multiply it by 5, that becomes the spending cap. And essentially, this means that leagues that are, clubs that are further down the table, that can then compete for players, for transfers, because those spending limits are being capped. And the idea is to ensure that competition is fair, it's equitable. Of course, Chelsea, Manchester City, and I think Aston Villa voted against this idea. Chelsea actually abstained, but Aston Villa, Manchester City, and Manchester United voted against this plan. So we'll see how the next round of voting evolves. Glovo is pulling out of the Ghanaian food delivery market after investing about $3.7 million in its latest round of investments. Not too bullish about Ghanaian food delivery industry. We also saw a couple of years back, Bolt Foods also pulled out of the market. So the delivery market there in the region has been impacted by macroeconomic headwinds, inflation, high interest rates, and also perhaps an overestimation of the addressable market size in places like Ghana. Microsoft is investing quite significantly on the back of CEO Satya Nadella's visit to Southeast Asia. It's looking at a $2.2 billion investment in cloud and AI in Malaysia. recently announcing also a $1.7 billion investment in Indonesia and building a data center in Thailand. Microsoft wants to train over 300,000 AI experts in the region over the next few years. So this is big news for Southeast Asia region, and we expect more announcements to come out from Microsoft on the back of that tour by the CEO. And finally, Apple has announced the largest share buyback in its history as a company, as a tech firm, of $110 billion. This did actually have an impact on the markets during the week. We saw Apple's share price helping to lift up the Nasdaq Composite Index of tech stocks. That's it for my top business picks for the past week. Look at top stories from around the world. First, in Nigeria, crude oil production sank in April, raising concerns that the upswing recorded in January and to some extent the second month of this year, February, was largely unsustainable. Although April data is yet to be released, Reuters and Bloomberg surveys based on shipping data and information from industry sources indicate that Nigeria recorded a dip. It will be recalled that crude oil production fell from 1.23 million barrels per day in February to 1.2 million barrels a day in March 2024. Still on oil, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission's chief executive, Gbenga Komolafe, says an asset sale deal between ExxonMobil and Seplat will be concluded in the next 2 weeks. The final approval expected from the oil regulator would end a 2-year delay since the deal was first agreed upon. The $1.28 billion sale has awaited regulatory approval since 2022. Nigeria's labor unions have given the government until the end of May to meet its demand for 615,000 naira in minimum wage revisions. Otherwise, it will no longer be able to guarantee industrial peace in Nigeria. That's according to the unions. This is coming despite an announcement made by the government to increase the minimum wage by 35% for civil servants. In the US, the Federal Reserve has said it will keep interest rates unchanged, noting a lack of further progress towards lowering inflation. The decision left the Federal Reserve's key rate hovering at the highest level in more than 2 decades, in the range of 5.25% to 5.5%, where it stood since last July. By keeping borrowing costs high, the Fed is hoping to cool the economy and reduce the pressures pushing up prices. Still in the US, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said on Tuesday that Americans are generally better off because wage increases are now outpacing price increases. But the Biden administration has more work to do to lower living costs. Yellen told a hearing of the US House of Representatives that inflation has come down considerably, but that prices are higher for many goods than before the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is affecting many Americans. Car brands are releasing more unique luxury tech features often not seen in other markets in the race to gain consumer attention in China's electric car market. China's upstart electric brands and even its own state-owned legacy automakers are racing to pack technology features once considered premium into EVs for as cheap as $20,000, which is less than half the cost of an average new car in the US, which now hovers at around $48,000. ZenPay Limited, the payment services platform of Nigerian commercial bank Zenith Bank PLC and the African Continental Free Trade Area have signed a historic formal agreement for the design and build of the Smart AfCTFA portal to facilitate trade within Africa. The signing ceremony on Friday, which was attended by the AfCFTA Secretary General Wamkele Mene and other dignitaries, comes almost a year after both organizations signed an MOU for Smart AfCFTA, a single portal for trade information for the continent. Zenith Bank Group Managing Director Dr. Ebenezer Onyago says the bank will fund the portal for trade information in Africa, while Microsoft will provide technical support for the development of the portal. Let's take a listen.
ZenPay is a wholly owned subsidiary of Zenith Bank PLC, as I said earlier, and it was set up specifically to provide digital banking solutions across the African continent. Tech initiative, which is one of the verticals that is coming under our HoldCo structure. In doing this, we are looking at the economic emancipation of Africa. We are looking at prosperity in Africa. We are looking at creating a connected Africa where Africans can trade together. Why do I have to go to Taiwan to look for an item I can get in, say, Burundi, or an item I can get in Senegal? So if we trade within us, like I said before, the money shouldn't be going to the wrong hands. If you think of the cost of payment, the cost of the correspondent bank bank charges and everything is significant. So all we are after in Zenith is not about profit motive, it's about the fact that we, given where we are, given our prowess in terms of deployment of technology, that we need to stand by African Continental Free Trade Area to really bring a connected African market that will foster economic integration, foster collaboration, foster a lot more, uniformity in terms of customs and practices and everything. So once we start doing it, over time, we are going to see growth and improvement in terms of African trade.
Well, that's it for our top stories.